Here, how many files do you have? And for that configuration to work, we need to restart the server. So sudo service. Here in sites available, there are configuration files. For every project we keep a separate file. So there is a default file which we will copy. And we set the name for the new file as the project name dash the username, because in the same computer there could be many users. That way we differentiate them and we can switch on and switch off the configurations of different users. Now there are two files available, default and web development 2016 with your name. Now we open the newly created configuration file. In every configuration file there is a server block. We change something inside this block. First, there is a setting for the port. Listen 80 means that nginx runs on port 80. We can also set any other port here which is free. How do you know which ports are free? So here's the list of ports in use. So we see that the port 5900 is in use. This is probably for Type VNC, for Apoptes. Apoptes client runs on 5900, and then nginx runs on port 18, and then you also have DNS masquerade, whatever it means, using the port number 53. And then their Java runs on port 90 and 20018 and 10137. And then there are other things like Chromium browser uses the port 5353 and so on. Everything that is not listed here is free and you can use it. They still do not encourage to use the port number 1, which is a reserved port. So if you want to use a new port, you can use, for instance, port number 2, whatever, any other port. For every different project, every different domain, you can set a different port if you want. But we do not change the port number 80 here, because for 80 we do not have to write anything behind the domain name. We don't have to write :80 here, because 80 is by default the port for web things. If we use another port, for instance port number 8, then we have to use :8 on the address bar. Here is something more important, default server. there may only be one server block with default server set. This means if somebody writes directly the IP address of the machine, which is not the domain name, then that server block will be served that has the default server. But we already have it in the file default. So here I erase it. The first block is for IPs that have 4 bytes, 127, not 1, 1. So every part of those 4 can have a number from 0 to 255. It means 256 different values, which means that one section of the IP address has the size of how many bits? 8 bits, yes, 2 power 8 is 256. And 8 bits is 1 byte. That means one IP address takes space 4 bytes. And yesterday we have figured out how many possible different combinations there can be different IP addresses. What was the number about? How big? 4 billion something. It's 256 power 4 for 4 bytes. And as there might be more devices connected to the same network soon, then 4 billion IP addresses is not enough. Therefore, they have created a 6-byte version of IP addresses. There are 6 divisions. And the second part here is meant for the 6-byte IP addresses. Therefore, there are 2 listen statements. Next thing, we have to set the folder from where the files will be served using this server block. This is somewhere. Let's find out where it is. Workspace with a capital W. This is the place that we should link here. Next thing is index. Next statement is index statement. This means that if we do not write any file name to the end and we only write the folder name, it checks whether there is a file called index.html in that folder. If that exists, then it serves this file. If this file does not exist, then it checks for index.html. If this file does not exist neither, then it checks for nginx Debian HTML. We do not need those files here, only index.html remains. Then the underscore behind the server name means any server name. We want to use our newly created domain name. Was it this one? What the hell is this here? see, it cannot work because it has a space in there. It should be changed. The second level domain name is the project name, and the first level domain name is the username. Okay, Christopher 226 if you want. Same domain name here. Next part is for location and try files. It tries the URL. If the file does not exist, it tries whether it's a folder. If it's not a folder, it displays not found site 404. Then here is a block for including a configuration. We do not need this line anymore. And we are done with this file. Next we have to change the default file, because otherwise our domain names or server names conflict. Default server should remain intact. The root, whatever, but the server name we can change it. Okay, let's leave it as it is. We don't need this include line here anymore, and anything else could remain as the same. Then how do we switch on the newly created configuration? That file does not exist in sites enabled yet. We should link it to the sites enabled folder, because the content of sites enabled will be read in by the main configuration file on nginx, not sites available. And we do not want to copy, because if we want to make some changes into the configuration file, we have to make the changes into two files. So therefore we create the soft link. By ln, and first we have to write the full path to the file we link. And then we set the full path for the new file, for the link. Now if we go to sites enabled, we see that there are two links. Now we created this link. For making nginx to know about the new configurations, we have to restart the server. Or reload or whatever. And now thank you, Tavi. It does not work. Thank you, Tavi. This side can't be reached. Ow! Still not. Oh. Why is it like this one here? Maybe it does not like capital letters. Ah, we had the dot here. Oh, now we see that it works. It makes no difference between capital and lowercase letters. And now it says forbidden. This is because we want to access the folder. If we put here the full path to the file, then it works, then it's not forbidden. But here, only for this project, we also want to see the content or the list of files inside a folder. That means we should add a new statement into our configuration file. Actually, those statements could be in any order, but I write it here. The new statement is called auto-index. This is for listing the contents of the folder, and we switch it on. And now and it works. Taavi, punast näed? Vaata ekraanile. See tähendab, et see link on valesti tehtud. Tee link korda. Kõigepealt meil tuleb see vale link ära kustutada siit. Remove. Nii, nüüd on see läinud. Vaata, sa püüdsid Web Development 2016 teha, siin on Eva lõpus.